Short-term and working memory. Sensory memory lasts for less than 1 second and gives rise to the persistence of vision. Short-term memory is the system that stores small amounts of information for a brief period of time. It depends upon two factors, the length and the duration. Now, based on the Atkinson-Shiffrin, they suggested the modal model. It envisions a serial structure. Information coming into the sensory model can be passed to a short-term memory and only then into the long-term memory. Rehearsal moves information from the short-term memory to the long-term memory, and attention helps one to focus on information that is particularly important or interesting. Sensory inputs to the sensory register. With the help of attention, it goes to the short-term storage, and with the help of rehearsal, it goes to the long-term storage. Brown-Peterson task is used to measure the duration of the short-term memory, which came around 15 to 20 seconds average. So they interpreted the result it as a result of the decay of the memory trace because of the passage of time after hearing the letters. However, others have observed that this can also be because of interference where new information displaces old information. The capacity of short-term memory was found to be 5 to 9 items or 7 plus or minus 2. This was suggested by George Miller, and it is somehow related to the idea about why the length of phone number is now 8 or 10. The introduction of the 7-digit phone number is often credited to the fact that Bell Laboratories looked to Miller for advice in the 1950s. Now, Luck and Vogel measure the capacity of short-term memory by flashing two arrays of colored squares separated by a brief delay. Participants had to indicate whether the second array was the same or different from the first array. Performance was almost perfect for 1 to 3 squares, but decreased when there were more than 4 squares. Thus, they concluded the short-term memory capacity is about 4 items. Chunking is a fact. It is used to describe the fact that small units can be combined into larger meaningful units like phrases, or even larger units like sentences, paragraphs, or stories. A chunk has been defined as a collection of elements that are strongly associated with one another but are weakly associated with elements in other chunks. Chase and Simon demonstrated chunking on an interaction between short-term memory and long-term memory. The performance was similar when they had to remember random arrangement. So they both concluded that the expert's advantage was not due to the more highly developed short-term memory, but due to their ability to group the chess pieces into meaningful chunks that they had already stored in the long-term memory. The criticisms of the idea of short-term memory is that first, short-term memory was described mainly as short-term passive storage mechanism, but in our daily lives, we not only hold parts of conversation in our mind, but also actively process and make sense of the current sentence. 2. According to the modal model, it should only be possible to perform one task, which should occupy the entire short-term memory, but we can do two tasks at the same time. This led Baddeley to consider alternates to the modal model, the dynamic processes involved in the cognition, and the fact that people can carry two tasks simultaneously. Hence was introduced the working memory by Hitch and Baddeley. It is a mental workspace in which a variety of processing operations were carried out on both new and old memories. They found that participants could perform two working memory tasks at the same time as long as the two tasks did not use the same modality of information, that is, visual and auditory. Although STM and WM have been used interchangeably, the visuospatial sketchpad holds visual and spatial information such as creating a mental image, and the phonological loop holds verbal and auditory information such as the counting. The central executive pulls information from long-term memory and coordinates the activity of the phonological loop and visuospatial sketchpad. The neuroscience of working memory. The prefrontal lobe, particularly the prefrontal cortex, when removed in monkeys, drastically decreased their performance. Fanashi briefed flashed a peripheral target, but the monkeys had to move only when the central fixation disappeared. Some neurons in the lateral PFC kept spiking during the delay period. This suggests that memory about the location might be maintained in the persistent spiking in these neurons. However, recently others have suggested that long-range brain oscillations in different frequencies play a role in working memory, that is, a synchronized activity. Neuroscience of working memory is persistent spiking.